Hello and welcome to India's World. President Xi Jinping has been given the title of core leader by the Chinese Communist Party. This puts him on a par with previous strong leaders like Mao, Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin. Since assuming office almost 4 years ago, Xi Jinping has been consolidating power in himself. In all, he has accumulated nearly a dozen formal titles already. Although the term core leader does not carry any specific powers, Xi Jinping's newest title reinforces his power to shape the future leadership of the party. Many fear that Xi Jinping, with far too much power amassed in himself, is eroding the principle of collective leadership adopted to prevent arbitrary abuse of power. To discuss how such concentration of power in President Xi Jinping might impact both developments within China as well as China's relationship with the world, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, a formidable diplomat. He was also Foreign Secretary of India and has served as India's ambassador to Turkey, Egypt, France and Russia. We also have with us Professor Alka Acharya. She is the Director of Institute of Chinese Studies in New Delhi as well as Professor of Chinese Studies at the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And we have with us Mr. Jaideva Ranade. He was Additional Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat and is currently President of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy in New Delhi. I welcome all of you to this discussion. Mr. Ranade, let me begin with you. In the Chinese communist system, what is the meaning of designating somebody the core leader? What is the kind of political currency these kind of titles have in the communist system?
Okay. I'll clarify the position in 4 quick points. Firstly, the phrase core leader was actually coined by Deng Xiaoping when he brought in Jiang Zemin as the General Secretary after the Tiananmen events. And at that time, he designated Mao as the core of the first generation, himself as the core of the second generation, Jiang Zemin of the third. Now, what happened was Hu Jintao was not able to really get himself designated as core of the fourth generation because of Jiang Zemin's antipathy towards him and their animosity. So that's one. But in this case, what it does signify is that Xi Jinping's position in the party and his position after having concentrated all the authority in himself has received the approval of the 348 Central Committee members who got together at the 6th plenum, which is the one actually which also decides on leadership appointments in future. The plenum document itself, I think, is also worth a quick mention. It's over 6,000 words. It does talk about the core leader and the core leadership, but it also emphasizes collective leadership of the party and inner party democracy, which means, to my mind, that it's not been a total, success, or shall I say, not success, but a total runover for Xi Jinping. There are some caveats that do exist. So that we'll have to see how it pans out. There are about 90 vacancies in the Central Committee that have to be filled at the next party Congress. And I think that will be the key, whether Xi Jinping is able to pull his people in. But being designated as the core leader and being acknowledged as such by all the military commanders, I think does strengthen his position before the party Congress.
Alka, what were the immediate circumstances which made it necessary to formally give absolute authority or near absolute authority to Xi Jinping?
It's not a kind of a sudden development.
No, he's been trying it for 1 year, but I'm saying why was it necessary?
No, see, the thing is that this whole notion of a core leader has been part of the discourse and it has been slowly built up. I mean, obviously, if you go back to the time Xi Jinping first came to power, he himself debunked this notion of core leadership. And there are 3 aspects here, I think, which would explain why it comes at this juncture. Number one, the notion of a core leader is now enshrined as somebody around whom the party revolves, which means that you have to have that kind of an authority, persona, effectiveness, and sense of, the man who will now lead the party. So Xi Jinping initially said that he would not go in for this core leadership until and unless his credentials in these senses were established. The second thing was that as when he first came to power, there was already a talk that by the time we came to the next party Congress, there would have to be a drastic change in the Politburo. And therefore, Xi Jinping's need now to gain that degree of control which will enable him to shape the next Politburo the way he wants to. And I think third is that this core leader notion has come up at very specific junctures in Chinese political history when the need to once again reassert the party, and more importantly, the one man in the party who is going to really be the decision maker in times of toughness and so on. So I think all these things have come together.
Okay. Ambassador Sibal, could there be a downside of this honor for Xi himself? That is, as he gains power and other party leaders begin deferring to him because they asked for loyalty to the core leader in that document, that people should sort of support him. Would Xi Jinping be under increasing pressure to deliver on economic and social problems facing China? And should he fail to do so, then would he be the only person to be blamed?
Well, you know, these are speculative questions. To my mind, clearly there is a crisis of leadership in China. And we have seen signs of that. The entire anti-corruption campaign that was launched by Xi Jinping, the arrest of Bhushan, this and that. And the fact that, and he's expressed this view quite publicly, that the Communist Party is losing that kind of respect and how should I say, acceptance by the public. And then there's the economic slowdown in China, plus their external problems. Now, the fact that he's launched such a powerful anti-corruption campaign where he's arrested the heads of the former security apparatus and other important personalities shows that there's a huge problem internally within China. And they need a strong leader to be able to cope with all these difficulties that are arising. So I look upon it, without being an expert, as a sign of actually a political crisis that is building up, that has built up in China. And it is an aspect of the weakness of the political system rather than any show of strength of the political system. Why should they, when it is the Communist Party that rules, when they have over the years established a kind of mode of leadership, why should at this stage he needs to be accepted as a core leader unless this represents a whole lot of fissures within the party apparatus and the need to have a strong person who can then control all these tendencies that are appearing, coupled with all the difficulties I've mentioned.
Quickly, Mr. Ranade, I mean, what Mr. Sibal is saying could be put in another way, that is to say that he's assumed the leadership or the title of core leader because the bureaucracy and the party had begun to sort of spin out of control a bit. And that's why you had the anti-corruption drive, and now it's trying to pull all those strands together, and that is why it's necessary to have a core leader. Would you agree?
Partially, in the sense, if we go back a little bit to the 18th Party Congress, which installed Xi Jinping, that was a Congress which actually was in favor of stolid party apparatchiks being appointed, of people who follow party discipline being appointed, because of the turmoil that had taken place in 2010, 2011, and as we saw a Politburo member making a bid when he shouldn't have been making a bid in the sense of Bhushan. So in this particular case, fissures certainly do exist, as the ambassador pointed out. Question is, how deep are they and how many factions have actually come out? There are obviously differences, but by getting himself nominated or appointed as the co-leader, for which there was a propaganda build-up for the last 6 months at least, definitive steps being taken. I think what he has done is he's diminished the authority that was wielded by Jiang Zemin and projected himself as the next strong person. Don't forget, his acolytes are already talking about a new 30-year term under Xi Jinping. So he's projected himself as such, and I think he has an eye on the next party congress where he does want to bring his people in, and this will give him a little boost in that effort.
That's next year, where 7 Politburo
late next year, probably November, October, November next year.
Okay, we're going to continue with this discussion in a bit. Stay with us, don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing the implications of Xi Jinping being designated core leader of China by the Chinese Communist Party. Alka, the decentralization of last 3 decades resulted in a lot of power being given to the provinces, and 71% of all expenditure in China is being made by the provincial governments, which is not true of even the some largest federal states. Take India or Australia or whoever else you might want to, US. While this has spurred economic growth, and people say that's why China has grown at the rate it has grown, but decentralization has also had its downside: wasteful expenditure, amassing of huge amount of debt, and corruption. Now, do you think all these problems will be solved if the centre assumes some of these powers, which is what becoming the core leader might do?
I don't think we are seeing a return to re-centralization, but certainly fiscal discipline, reining in the provinces in terms of this huge debt. I mean, these are measures that have been on the anvil for the last 2-3 years. We are seeing this. There are reportedly strong differences between Li Keqiang and Xi Jinping on the kind of developmental and the new stage of reforms that are required. And now again, widely reported that Li Keqiang may also be on his way out. I think what also is related to this attempt by Xi Jinping is to once again put the party in a position of control at a very difficult juncture. That we are seeing slowdown in the economic growth, huge challenges, as you said, the debts are now spiraling out of control, the structural changes that are on the, what we are going to definitely see are some tough measures. Okay. And therefore, Xi Jinping, and it's interesting, if you look at his core group, they are not just the normal factional kind of groupings that you see. He has brought in people from the provinces into being part of his group, his inner advisory group, and these are people, they are coming from universities, they are coming from provinces where he first began. So it's a very interesting way in which he's trying to reshape.
But for this, he didn't have to designate himself core leader. He could have done it without redesignation.
See, core in one sense, if you see, by definition, core would mean that stable rock at the center.
Okay, let me take the stability question to Ambassador Sibal. You see, have the regional governments in China also spun out of control in the sense that local cliques of Communist Party officials and bureaucrats have become virtual rivals of the central government?
Well, again, I'm not an expert in terms of how the Communist Party is structured and the relationship between Beijing and the provinces. But it's quite clear if you use your common sense that the fact that he needed to be designated as a core leadership is reflective of deep problems that are surfaced and which need to be attended to, and you need a strong leadership at the center. Though, of course, when you talk of China and a highly authoritarian centralized state, by implication, it not being a democracy, there is a strong leadership, and that leadership is based on the power of the Communist Party, which has lost a lot of strength on the ground. I think it is more a sign of the instabilities that are surfacing in China, economic and other forms of instabilities, which therefore need a very strong hand. I do not know what the implication of this is between the relationship between Xi Jinping and the PLA, because there have been also views expressed about whether the PLA is fully under his control or not fully under his control, because he's been lecturing them to obey the dictates of the Communist Party and things like that.
But he's chairman of the Central Military Commission, and he's also designated himself as commander-in-chief.
Right, but then there was no need for him to give this dictate that the PLA must follow the dictates of the Communist Party of China and asserting. Why does he have to say that publicly if the leadership of the Communist Party is accepted by the PLA without reservation? So to my mind, what we are seeing is a difficult period ahead for China, internally and externally, and the fact that Xi Jinping has designated himself as a core leader is neither here nor there, because it's not a democracy. The Communist Party is at the core of the governance of the country. There is no dissent, there are no other political parties, there is nothing of the kind. So within a highly centralized system, now you have a person who will be designated as the core leader of an already, if highly centralized system, in itself shows that there is need to bring all the factions together, for people to accept that he is the person who must be given all the powers, or his power should be accepted so that he can deal with the problems, especially the results of the anti-corruption drive, where so many people have been arrested, PLA generals have been arrested. If such a thing was happening in our country, you would see how much of a crisis it would be.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Ranade, that are we therefore witnessing, or what we have witnessed up to now has been a purge of Xi Jinping's rivals? In the past 2 years, officials, including military generals, have been arrested and jailed. So is this a purge, or is this a honest and sincere war against corruption?
I think there are three elements involved here. One is, of course, it's a purge. He has got rid of many rivals. The second is he's whittled down whatever little resistance there was in the PLA to the party's control. Make no mistake, the party has been firmly in control of the PLA. As far as operational structures are concerned, it is the party that has guided and commanded the PLA. It is in terms of business practices, in terms of promotions where corruption came in, where there were weaknesses, and what the Chinese call the Western liberal thought, that the army should be an instrument of the state and not of the party. That is what he has actually cracked down on. And when he is telling the army that they must listen to the party, absolute obedience to the party, that is what he is referring to. As far as the third element is concerned, after removing it is to establish himself and his control. There are over 1 million party members who've been disciplined so far. There are going to be many more, and by assuming this title, he is actually sending them a signal. But one point more I would like to say, which I alluded to earlier, was his aim. If one reads what his acolytes say, and the first shot on this core leadership, in fact, was fired by his right-hand man, Li Chanshu, who is the head of his general office, very powerful man. But his acolytes talk about a new 30-year period, first being of Mao, then of Tang, and then of Xi Jinping. In which case, it doesn't mean that he's weak. It means that he's setting the stage for a new era, as it were. Whether he succeeds or not, we do not know.
May not go out in 2022.
That's another question. But at the moment, we don't know whether he'll succeed or not. Let's wait and see the next few years.
We'll take a break at this point. We'll be back in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the implications of Chinese President Xi Jinping designating himself as the core leader of China. Alka, are we looking at Cultural Revolution 2.0, or do you think that in the last 50 years, Chinese society has changed so much that there's no fertile ground for authoritarianism, even if there is a leader who wants to be authoritarian, because of 3 decades of increasing openness and economic growth?
No, I think there's no getting away from the fact that we are looking at fundamentally an authoritarian system. And that's quite obvious. They do have an entire discourse opening up for the last, 10 years plus about democracy with Chinese characteristics. And I think we must understand that there are 2 aspects here. There is one cultural and there is one political. And I think what the Chinese ideologues have been arguing about is that the system in China is culturally constituted as well, and there is therefore a certain dimension to the way in which China is unfolding its own attempt at democratizing the system. So we would need to assess it on its own terms as well, and not just always have comparisons with very different systems, in fact, because that will just lead us to the wrong. Return of cultural revolution? Most definitely not. I don't think that in the current dispensation there is any scope for mobilizing people to rise up against the system or challenge, as it were, the existing order. No. They are looking at continuing with an orderly, stable system. And I think Xi Jinping's, the idea therefore
while
is
getting rid of dissent and
see, that is something that they cannot entirely control. Already, see, one thing we must also keep in mind is that the Chinese Communist Party today is not what it was in Mao Zedong's time. It's certainly not what it was in Deng Xiaoping's time. Technology has changed the way Chinese are dissenting today. In fact, that's one major problem.
Okay, let me take that question to Ambassador Sibal. So wouldn't the tightening of the ideological sphere, because that's what being the core leader means, and song and dance about what a great man he is and how his wife is like a mother and he's Papa Xi and so on and so forth. Doesn't it pose danger to the prospect of a healthy civil society, curtailment of free speech, Or are these not important in a communist society at all?
Two, three things.
They may not be important for a communist party, but society is different from the party.
No, see, Xi Jinping, and it's surprising that he felt the need to say so publicly, repeatedly, decrying Western democracy, Western values, saying there's no need, that China is opposed to this. And knowing that the external reaction to such a frontal attack on Western values and democracy and everything else, and curbing the NGOs, curbing the internet, is actually a red rag to the bull insofar as the Western world is concerned. But he feels strong enough to be able to
So he thinks
to do that.
these are not important issues for China.
Not only not important issues for
They should
China,
be avoided.
he's defiant with regard to this. I mean, can you imagine the Indian leadership saying this at all? Because we are far more conscious that we have to live in today's world and we have to adjust to the external environment, and we can't go it alone. China may be strong economically, etc., 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 but again, it has links abroad, and its strength and economic growth is linked to its relationship with the external world. But they are trying to carve out an ideology of their own in which there is no place for this kind of dissent, NGOs, civil society, and everything else. And that's the road that they are going down on.
But civil society space may be shrinking elsewhere in neighboring countries also, but we'll leave it at that. But you wanted to add something.
Well, I was just going to say that what we've been seeing for the last 2 years is actually a hardening of the Chinese state. And they have brought in new laws in the last, in fact, 1 year. One is a social credit law, which is going to kick in by 2018, where every individual is going to be tagged and given a certain number of points, which will even regulate his class and mode of travel, whether he goes in first class or third class. Secondly, they've started weeding out what they call Western literature, Western books from the syllabi and from the libraries of colleges and schools. Thirdly, they've expanded party surveillance. And now you're going to have a party representative in junior school and the primary school and middle schools, and some of the schools will be run by party people. Middle of this year, they had a national security education campaign, which basically warning people against foreigners befriending them, particularly Chinese girls, saying that they're not interested in you, but they're interested in secrets. So there's been a series of things which are really tightened the screws, if I may say, on society.
Okay, Alka.
Contextualize this.
Okay, but can I ask you something? You can contextualize and also answer this. Do you think there's a contradiction between revitalizing the economy and at the same time moving the country towards one party, one leader rule, and tightening the screws on everybody?
See, there have been phases in the Chinese history where far worse draconian measures had been adopted. What we are seeing is yet another phase, and I link it directly to the pitfalls that are ahead in terms of the economic transformation. Already the economy has lost steam, and the Chinese are gearing up for this whole transformation. People are deeply, deeply dissatisfied with the way the reforms have panned out. There are huge pockets of resistance.
I agree with all that. I'm merely saying, is there a contradiction between opening up your economy, revitalizing it? And
what I see is this attempt that the party stays united in this crucial period of transition, and that is why this. Otherwise, the whole business of opposition, we will see far greater opposition.
Okay, so my question to you, last question really, because we're running out of time, is that how will the emergence of Xi Jinping as the singularly most powerful leader help him deal with international challenges? Would you not say that Xi Jinping's tenure has been one of foreign policy failure? You look at the way China's got a slap in the face in South China Sea from the Permanent Court of Arbitration Hague on the 9-dash line. In the case of Senkaku's Islands, US has said Article 5 of the treaty with Japan extends to Senkaku's. South Korea has put in the THAAD missile shield despite China objecting to it, paving the way for a trilateral cooperation between South Korea, US and Japan. So where are the foreign policy successes? In Europe, they've not been designated a free market economy, and in fact, anti-dumping tariffs are being imposed on China. So how is he going to deal with all these issues by being designated core leader?
I think Xi Jinping and China under Xi Jinping is becoming more and more of a problem because he's intensely nationalist. He's deriving his ambitions from China's past and its history, and he's using cultural references that go back to China's historical past. So he's a problem, and that's why we are having problem. China is having problems with all its neighbors in South China Sea. Though, of course, since they have a lot of money to throw around, they are able to divide and rule, and achieving some success on the ground here and there. If you look at the case of Philippines, but with India also, the relationship has entered into a kind of a stalemate because the level of distrust between India and China have gone up a great deal because of China's needless opposition to India's membership of the NSG and opposing the designation of known terrorists as terrorists by the UN Security Council. Just doing this because of its relationship with Pakistan and the CPEC without totally disregarding India's sensitivities.
This new designation will not help him in any of these things.
And with the United States, relationship has become far more problematic. Both Hillary Clinton and Trump have certain views of China depending on who becomes president. So they're going to enter into a difficult phase there. So the only relationship which has become favorable for China in a sense is the fact that Russia has agreed to play second fiddle to China, because Russia itself is under pressure. So I don't think this core leadership is going to help him in dealing with the external world.
All right, we've really run out of time. Thank you very much for participating in this discussion, Ambassador Sibal, Professor Alka, Acharya, Mr. Jaideva, Ranade. Thank you once again. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Until then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's World.